My family informed me that my presence would only make the wedding uncomfortable. They stated it plainly, almost as if it were a simple observation rather than a direct attack. Mom's tone was completely neutral. In the background, I could hear my sister Brooke's fiancé, Dean, faintly smirking. Mom finished. Just make sure you don't ruin Brooke's day for once. She added that last part almost casually, as if this humiliating restriction was somehow intended to help me. They wanted no drama, no spectacle, just my quiet absence wrapped in pleasantries. That morning, I watched them leave. The car was packed tight with roses and expectations. I chose not to go. I stayed behind, watching the sun crawl across my kitchen floor, thinking about how a family could celebrate an event by deliberately excluding one of its own. That evening, everything changed. The news came, and their perfect day completely unraveled. I had been raised in a home where genuine affection was shown through quiet restraint. Mom's approval was subtle, usually just a quick nod. Dad's praise came with a permanent, forced smile. Brooke was the favorite, the radiant one everyone felt compelled to shield, even from the consequences of her own mistakes. I was the practical one. I cleaned up the messes, made sure everything appeared flawless before anyone noticed the cracks beneath. It made sense that I ended up as a restoration contractor. I found satisfaction in fixing what others had ruined: old buildings, furniture, and occasionally, people. When Brooke announced her engagement, I truly wanted to share in her happiness. I helped with the floral arrangements, took measurements for the extra party seating, and even covered the venue deposit when her credit card was rejected. I convinced myself I was just being a supportive family member. But as the date approached, my involvement rapidly declined. Group chats went silent. Crucial planning meetings seemed to bypass me entirely. At first, I chalked it up to poor organization. Soon enough, I realized it was intentional. Mom had taken over communication. She spoke in that overly careful voice reserved for decisions made without me that still affected me directly. "It needs to be a very intimate ceremony," she explained. "We just want total calm." I asked, calm for whom? She sighed deeply, as though I were already asking too much. Then came the familiar line, "Just try not to ruin your sister's day for once." That sentence landed heavy in my stomach, like swallowing a rock. I wanted to ask when I had ever caused destruction. When had covering Brooke's massive debts, babysitting her children, or co-signing her failed business loan counted as sabotage? But I stayed silent. You can't win battles against people who refuse to acknowledge the conflict exists. The following week, I drove to my parents' house to drop off some tools Dad needed for a new garage project. The house looked exactly as it always did: elaborate Victorian molding, slightly peeling paint, curtains drawn tight. Inside, Mom meticulously arranged white roses for the rehearsal dinner. The kitchen smelled of vanilla candles and pure, unrelenting control. "Brooke's dress fitting is this evening," she said. "You could join us, provided you promise not to inject any awkwardness." I almost laughed. In this family, the line between a genuine invitation and a passive-aggressive jab was non-existent. "Don't worry," I assured her. "I won't make anything uncomfortable." Her smile tightened in a strange mixture of relief and immediate guilt. That evening, I stood on the front porch, watching the sun dip behind the Rockies. The air smelled of pine and rain. I thought about the effortless way people rewrite personal history. My absence would be spun as indifference rather than the result of being told I wasn't wanted. Somewhere miles away, music was beginning for a celebration I had helped fund and organize but was forbidden to attend. Perhaps silence truly was the only form of love in my family, or maybe it was just a polite term for erasure. The day before the wedding, my phone buzzed with pictures I wasn't supposed to see. My cousin had posted a rehearsal selfie. My parents were front and center, Brooke in white, Dean wearing that smooth, salesman smile, the kind that always carried fine print. The caption read, "Tomorrow's the big day." Everyone looked absolutely radiant. Everyone, except me. I tried to convince myself I had earned this peaceful Saturday, free from family drama. But as laughter in those images started to feel overwhelmingly loud, I powered down my phone and retreated to my workbench. Sinclair Restoration, a century-old farmhouse I was currently working on, awaited. I ran my hands over the smooth grain of a newly reinforced post, strong, balanced, stable, the exact opposite of my family. By late afternoon, a severe storm rolled over Austin. The sky was bruised gray, and thunder pressed against the windows. I made tea, no wine this time, and tried to believe staying home had been the right choice. No outbursts, no whispers, no giving them more ammunition to label me difficult. Still, the silence felt unnerving, like holding my breath too long. At 6 o'clock, Mom called. I watched her name blink across the screen until the call dropped. No message followed, just silence. In my family, silence was never peace. It was punishment. As darkness fell, city lights flickered through heavy rain. I stood by the window, watching blurry headlights on wet asphalt, picturing exactly what was unfolding miles away at Highland Manor. I could see the scene perfectly. Mom and Dad as gracious hosts, Brooke radiant under chandeliers I had helped select, Dean charming the guests with hollow compliments. A notification pinged, then another, then dozens. Group chats were flooding in. You're totally missing this. The ballroom is insane. Best wedding of the year. I scrolled through the photos, each one hitting like a physical blow. Champagne glasses raised, toasting new beginnings. Then a single message cut through the noise, a direct text from Mom, Cassidy. You understand why we thought it best this way. We love you. No punctuation, no heart, just a clear, definitive statement. I put the phone down and stared. Outside, the rain fell harder, streaming down the glass, making the house seem as if it were weeping. I whispered, "So I didn't go." For the first time, I felt no guilt for prioritizing my own well-being. Still, guilt has a way of sneaking into quiet spaces. By 10 o'clock, I had checked every lock, tidied tools that were already neat, and paced the house, ensuring everything was in order. An unexpected noise made me jump. The thunder, the faint creak of the old floorboards, it all sounded like footsteps, like ghosts I couldn't fully banish. I eventually sat on the floor next to my half-packed toolbox, the familiar scent of varnish clinging to my hands. What would have happened if I had shown up at Highland Manor? Would they have glared at me? Would Brooke have started crying? Would Dean have smiled dismissively, calling me overly dramatic? I pictured myself outside the ballroom entrance, invisible yet somehow in the way. No, I wasn't going. Not this time, not ever. I had spent my life fixing their messes, covering their errors, pretending everything was fine. But families like mine don't really want peace. They want total compliance, disguised as forgiveness. I closed my eyes, listening to the storm violently claw at the roof. Somewhere within that chaos, I felt a flicker of freedom, the kind that only comes after you stop desperately seeking an invitation. Down the street, a power transformer blew, plunging my block into darkness. My reflection disappeared from the window. For a moment, it was just me and the steady, insistent sound of the rain. Maybe this is what starting fresh sounds like. But calm is never sustainable in my family. A few hours later, the electricity flickered back on, and the world returned, but the world was on fire. That night, the storm reached its peak. Lightning flashed through my windows, white and brutal, splitting the sky in two. I lay on the couch, the TV volume low, showing a home restoration rerun I barely focused on. I kept telling myself whatever happened at Highland Manor didn't matter. Staying away was an act of personal strength. Then my phone started vibrating, once, twice, then non-stop. At first, I tried to ignore it, assuming it was more photos, more reminders of what I wasn't part of. But the vibrations didn't stop. They multiplied. Calls, texts, alerts from people I hadn't spoken to in years flooded the screen. I grabbed the phone. The screen was a burst of pure panic. Are you seeing this? Oh my God. Check channel 9. Cassidy, it's your sister. Something major happened. My stomach dropped. I switched the TV to the local news. Footage was shaky, clearly filmed on a guest's phone. The graphic banner read, "Breaking news. Violence erupts at Highland Manor." For a split second, I thought it must be a mistake. Then I saw her, Brooke, my sister, in her white satin dress, makeup smudged, hair unraveling. She was screaming, completely out of control. Facing her was Dean, the man who had moments ago radiated charm, now furious, red-faced, yelling something lost beneath the panic of the crowd. Then he raised his hand. The slap echoed through my speakers, and I physically recoiled. Guests gasped. The camera jolted. Someone screamed. Then the feed cut out. I remained frozen, my forgotten wine glass vibrating in my hand. Outside, the rain pounded the roof like distorted applause from another realm. My phone lit up again, Mom calling. I let it go to voicemail. Then another, then another. The missed call counter climbed relentlessly, each notification a tiny, desperate admission of fault. Finally, I listened to the most recent message. Her voice sounded thin and unsteady. "Cassidy, please. Your sister is hurt. She needs you. We're at the hospital now. You have to come." I pressed the phone to my chest, taking shallow breaths. All my life, this was my default. Rush in when chaos erupted, stabilize, clean up, forgive. But something had shifted. They had explicitly warned me I would ruin the wedding. It turned out they could ruin it all on their own. I lowered the TV volume. The anchor continued discussing the alleged assault and pending legal charges, but it felt distant, muffled, like static. I walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The street glistened under the streetlights, quiet, freshly washed. I could have grabbed my keys and driven to the hospital, held Brooke's hand, resumed my role as the dependable one. But what would that change? I hadn't been welcome at her joy. Why should I be summoned to clean up her wreckage? My reflection stared back at me, exhausted, pale, resolute. "Not this time," I whispered. My phone buzzed again. Another attempt. Another chance to follow their script. I silenced it, placing it face down on the table. The house settled into silence, marked only by the ticking clock. In the distance, sirens wailed. And for the first time in years, the absence of guilt felt like pure freedom. The morning after the disastrous wedding, the bright sunlight felt wrong. Too cheerful, too normal for what had happened. I woke to an avalanche of messages, headlines, and countless versions of the same video. It was inescapable on TV, online platforms, even silently replaying on a cafe screen. Local wedding ends in assault. Captions screamed, looping the grainy footage repeatedly. Brooke's white dress shimmered under the chandeliers, her face streaked. Dean's slap was muffled but unmistakable. The crowd gasped sharply each time the clip played. A bouquet hit the floor. Champagne glasses tipped over. Cameras flashed. 30 seconds of pure disaster, forever captured. By noon, the story had gone viral beyond Austin. Every news outlet recycled the same details. Prominent engineer assaults bride during Highland Manor wedding. Some tabloids dredged up Brooke's failed cafe, framing her as unlucky in both finance and romance. As for me, I was entirely omitted, which suited me perfectly. For once, I was completely invisible. The first knock arrived that afternoon. I didn't need the peephole to know who it was. Only one person knocked that way. 3 sharp raps, a pause, then 2 more. The rhythm of absolute control. I opened the door. Mom stood there, completely drained. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun that didn't suit her usual composure. She looked smaller, physically diminished, as if the weight of public humiliation had shrunk her spine. "Cassidy," she whispered. She stepped inside my house before I could offer any resistance. "Your sister is resting now. The police questioned Dean this morning." I nodded once, arms crossed over my chest. "You probably should sit down." She ignored me, walking straight to the kitchen counter, the same counter where months ago she had criticized me for not calling enough, and gripped the edge as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. "It was truly horrific," she said, her voice trembling. "He just snapped. No one anticipated it." I stayed silent. Her eyes quickly met mine. "I know you're furious. You have every right to be. But please, Cassidy, don't make this situation worse." That line almost made me laugh. "No, worse. You told me not to attend," I reminded her. "I followed your instructions, yet it still became a total disaster. How is that my fault?" "I didn't claim it was your fault," she snapped back. "You didn't need to." For a long minute, only the low hum of the refrigerator filled the space. Then she whispered, "Your sister is asking for you." I exhaled slowly, trying to steady the rush of emotions, resentment, self-pity, and the weight of familiar obligation. "Of course she is," I finally said. "She only ever asks for me when the pieces are already scattered and broken." "Cassidy, please. She needs support." "The media." I cut her off sharply. "The media will leave eventually. They always do. But you," I stepped closer. "You told me staying home was essential. You told me my presence would ruin everything." She flinched. "I was trying to protect her?" "No. You were trying to protect the perfect illusion." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. My mother never allowed herself to cry in front of anyone. After she left, I remained at the kitchen table. Her perfume lingered, lilac, heavy with guilt. For decades, I had accepted that selective conditional love as normal in our family. Love only acceptable when it was pretty. But the simple, painful truth was this: love that demands your silence is not love. It is management. 2 days later, my father stopped by. He didn't knock. He just appeared in the garage doorway, wiping grease from his hands as if stepping away from a half-finished project. "Your mom mentioned she stopped over," he mumbled. "She did," I confirmed. He nodded, eyes scanning the tools neatly arranged on the wall. "You always kept things so organized." "Someone had to," I replied. He winced but didn't push back. "Your mother is having a difficult time with this. She feels immensely guilty." "She should," I stated. "She built this situation." He lowered his gaze. "Brooke is moving back in with us. The children too. Naturally. She wants to see you." I turned fully to face him. "And exactly what do you want, Dad?" He paused. "I want peace." I shook my head slowly. "Peace isn't pretending nothing ever happened." He didn't linger much longer. Before leaving, he placed a thin brown envelope on my workbench. Inside were photocopies of old loan documents, proof that money I had given them specifically for their mortgage had been diverted to cover Brooke's prior business debts. Every page was a stark reminder of the deception. I could have acted immediately, screamed, called the bank, reported the fraud. But I held back. Not yet. I had learned that true justice isn't about instant fury. It's about precise timing. A week later, a local reporter contacted me. "You're Cassidy Alvarez, correct? The bride's sister? We hear there's a deeper story." I was tempted to reveal everything. Favoritism, endless lies, the way my parents rewrote history whenever Brooke failed. But I considered what silence had already accomplished. It hadn't just protected me, it had exposed them. "No comment," I said firmly and hung up. That night, I drove slowly past my parents' house. Reporters lingered on the sidewalk, cameras aimed at the single porch light. Through the curtains, I saw Mom packing nervously, phone pressed to her ear. Dad sat slumped at the dining table, shoulders heavy. Brooke's faint silhouette moved upstairs, uncertain. I didn't stop. I just drove. The next morning, I mailed the bank copies of the loan documents. I didn't hide my identity, and I wasn't motivated by malice. It was just the truth, delivered where it needed to go. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. A month later, the house was quiet. No reporters. No parties. No extravagant Christmas lights that year. My parents eventually sold the property. Brooke found 2 jobs and slowly began paying her own bills. No one thanked me, and that was fine. I wasn't seeking gratitude. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it just leaves you alone long enough for the truth to echo. One evening, I sat on my porch. The mountains glowed pink in the sunset, a cool chill creeping into the air. I thought of the younger me, the girl who fixed everything, sacrificed everything for peace. She was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood that not every structure is worth restoring. My phone buzzed. A text from Brooke. "I'm sorry. I honestly didn't know how bad it was until it happened to me." I typed back instantly. "Then don't repeat the mistake." No lecture. No pity. Just a line drawn clearly in the sand. I set the phone down. The sky was deep, tranquil blue. Somewhere behind those mountains, Highland Manor stood empty. Flowers wilted, lights off, ghosts left to their own devices. Their perfect day had utterly collapsed, and for once, I was not the one holding the match. Months passed. The chaos faded like smoke after a fire. Public scandal settled into silence. New headlines replaced the old. The world eventually stopped caring. But I couldn't unlearn what I had learned. How quickly love becomes transactional when control is threatened, how easily a family can mistake forced silence for forgiveness.